February 2008. Fayum Desert, 55 miles south of Cairo. A geophysics team from Egypt's National Research Institute of Astronomy and Geophysics is dragging a ground-penetrating radar antenna across the sand. They are scanning the area just south of a crumbling mud-brick pyramid that most tourists drive past without stopping. The pyramid belongs to a pharaoh named Amenemhat III, a ruler of Egypt's 12th dynasty who died roughly 3,800 years ago. What they are looking for is the lost Egyptian labyrinth, a massive mortuary temple complex that ancient sources claimed was more magnificent than the pyramids themselves. The scan is routine. What the radar returns is not. Instead of random bedrock, the instruments are showing geometric patterns at a depth of 26 to 40 feet. Vertical walls, several feet thick, connected to form what appears to be a massive grid of rooms beneath the desert floor. The lead researcher, Dr. Abbas Mohammed Abbas of the Institute's Geoelectric and Geomagnetic Laboratory, runs the data again. Same result. The team switches instruments. They deploy very low-frequency electromagnetic sounding, then electrical resistivity tomography. Every method returns the same structure. But here is the part that turns a geophysical anomaly into one of the most contentious discoveries in modern archaeology. 4 ancient writers, spanning 5 centuries, described this exact structure in this exact location. Herodotus visited around 450 BCE, over 1,300 years after it was built, and called it greater than the pyramids. He counted 3,000 rooms, half above ground, half below. He was forbidden from entering the underground level. And 2,500 years later, the team that found evidence of it was told to stop digging. The peer-reviewed paper exists. The anomalies are documented. And right now, salt water from modern irrigation canals is rising through the sand and dissolving whatever is still down there. This is that story. To understand what the radar found, we need to understand who built it and why he chose this location. Amenemhat III ruled Egypt during the 12th dynasty, roughly 1860 to 1814 BCE. His reign lasted 46 years, one of the longest documented reigns in all of Egyptian history. The son of the great pharaoh Senusret III, Amenemhat inherited a kingdom at the height of its power and ambition during Egypt's Middle Kingdom period. We know the exact length of his reign because a papyrus fragment recovered from the nearby workers' town of El Lahan records year 46, first month of Akhet, day 22. And Amenemhat was not a pharaoh who sat still. He transformed the entire Fayum Depression through a massive hydraulic engineering project. He regulated the flow of the Nile into the Fayum Basin through the Bar Yusuf Canal, a channel running roughly 9 miles long and 16 feet or deep, creating what the Greeks later called Lake Moeris. He turned marshland into Egypt's most productive farmland. He controlled trade networks stretching from Nubia to the Mediterranean. Gold flowed from mines in the south. Grain surpluses funded construction projects on a scale that nobody in the Middle Kingdom had attempted before. His first pyramid, at Dashur, failed. Groundwater seeped into the substructure and cracked the chambers around his 15th year of rule. So he abandoned it and started over at Hawara, at the entrance to the Fayum, controlling access to the richest agricultural land in Egypt. This time, he was not going to let water win. The Hawara Pyramid rises 335 feet on each side and originally stood about 190 feet tall. From the outside, it looks unimpressive, mud brick, crumbling, easy to ignore. But the burial chamber hidden inside is one of the most extraordinary engineering achievements of the Bronze Age. It is carved from a single block of yellow quartzite, roughly 22 feet long, 8 feet wide, and 6 feet tall, with walls over 2 feet thick. The entire monolith weighs more than 100 tons. It was quarried near modern Cairo and transported over 60 miles to Hawara. How they moved it and lowered it into the pyramid's core remains an open question. The chamber was sealed with a single quartzite slab weighing about 45 tons, lowered into place by releasing sand from beneath it into side galleries. Above that sat 2 limestone relieving blocks, each weighing roughly 50 tons, capped by a 3-foot-thick mud brick arch. And the corridor leading to the chamber was designed to make sure nobody ever reached it, with dead-end passages, false doors, sliding stone plugs, and trap rooms. It took Flinders Petrie, who would later be knighted and is now considered the father of modern Egyptology, months of crawling through flooded tunnels to find the real entrance in 1888. But the pyramid was only half of what Amenemhat built. Directly south of it, on its doorstep, he constructed something that 4 of the ancient world's most respected writers agreed was the single most impressive building they had ever seen. Herodotus, the Greek historian, visited around 450 BCE, over 1,300 years after it was built. He was an eyewitness. He walked through the building himself. In Book 2 of his Histories, passage 148, he describes 12 roofed courts, 6 facing north and 6 facing south, containing 3,000 chambers in 2 levels, 1,500 above ground and 1,500 below. He says he personally toured the upper rooms, but when he asked to enter the underground level, the Egyptian caretakers refused. They told him the lower chambers contained the burial vaults of the kings who built the complex and the tombs of sacred crocodiles. No foreigner was allowed to see what was down there. Herodotus was not easily impressed. He had seen the Parthenon. He knew the great temples of the Greek world, and he wrote that this building surpassed the pyramids themselves. About 400 years later, the Roman-era geographer Strabo visited around 25 BCE. His account appears in Book 17 of his Geography, Section 1, Passage 37. Strabo was an engineer's observer. He focused on the construction details. He described a great palace composed of as many smaller palaces as there were administrative districts in Egypt, which at the time numbered just under 30. Each court was supported by 27 monolithic columns, and the detail that still staggers structural engineers today. Strabo wrote that the roof of each chamber consisted of a single stone, and that the covered passages were likewise roofed with single slabs of surpassing size, with no intermixture anywhere of timber or of any other material. Monolithic stone roofs spanning entire halls. No wood, no mortar, single slabs. Then came Pliny the Elder, writing around 77 CE in Book 36 of his Natural History, passages 84 through 89. Pliny did not visit personally, but he compiled reports from those who had. He describes entrance columns of Parian marble and interior columns of red Aswan granite. Halls reached by flights of 90 stairs leading down to the ground level, and a sensory detail that no other writer mentions. When doors were opened inside the labyrinth, they produced a terrifying rumble of thunder. Whether that was acoustic engineering or simply massive stone pivots grinding against granite thresholds, we do not know. Pliny also noted that most of the building had to be traversed in total darkness. The fourth witness was Diodorus Siculus, writing around 60 BCE. He attributed the labyrinth to a king he called Mendus, and he added one detail that none of the others included. He claimed that Daedalus, the legendary architect of Greek mythology, visited the Egyptian labyrinth and was so impressed that he copied its design for King Minos of Crete. Diodorus is saying the Greek myth of the Minotaur's labyrinth was inspired by a real building at Hawara. We cannot verify that claim, but it tells us how famous this structure was in the ancient world. 4 writers, 5 centuries, different cultures, different eras, different agendas, and their descriptions of the layout, the scale, and the location all align. If you are watching this and thinking this is exactly the kind of deep dive you want more of, take a second and subscribe to the channel. We cover ancient discoveries, buried engineering, and the stories that mainstream documentaries leave out. One click, and you will not miss the next one. Now, if this building was real, and every ancient source says it was, the obvious question is, where did it go? That is what Flinders Petrie went to Hawara to find out. In 1888, the British archaeologist arrived in the Fayum with a team and began excavating south of the pyramid. What he found was not a building. It was the ghost of one. A vast foundation bed of fine white limestone chips, several feet thick, spread across a footprint he measured at roughly 1,000 feet long and 800 feet wide. That is about 18 acres. To put that in perspective, Petrie himself calculated that you could place the Great Hall of Karnak, every successive temple adjoining it, the Temple of Mut, the Temple of Khonsu, both great temples of Luxor, and the entire Ramesseum on that foundation. And there would still be room left over. Scattered across the foundation, Petrie recovered fragments of red granite and sandstone, 2 granite shrines each containing a statue of Amenemhat III, a limestone head of the crocodile god Sobek, and a Hathor sculpture. He also found the famous Fayum mummy portraits, the most extensive collection of painted portraits surviving from the ancient world, and a Greek papyrus containing parts of Books 1 and 2 of Homer's Iliad. But of the labyrinth itself, the walls, the columns, the roofs, the 3,000 rooms, nothing remained above the foundation layer. Petrie concluded that the entire structure had been systematically quarried away during the Ptolemaic and Roman periods, its stone reused for other buildings. And then there was the princess. In 1956, Egyptian archaeologists Naguib Farag and Zaki Iskander discovered a small pyramid about 1.2 miles south of the main pyramid. Inside was an intact burial. Gold and carnelian jewelry, 3 silver vases, an alabaster offering table, and a granite sarcophagus. The occupant was Princess Neferuptah, Amenemhat's daughter. A chamber had been prepared for her inside the king's own quartzite burial chamber, which was extremely unusual, since only kings were normally buried inside their own pyramid. But she was ultimately interred separately. UCL Egyptologist Wolfram Grajecki argues this happened because the king's chamber had already begun to flood, the same groundwater problem that had destroyed Amenemhat's first pyramid at Dashur. Water. It defeated the pharaoh in life, and it is defeating his legacy now. That brings us back to February 2008, and to a Belgian researcher named Louis de Cordier. De Cordier was not an archaeologist. He was an artist, a graduate of St. Lucas Art School in Brussels, who had become obsessed with the lost labyrinth. He privately funded and organized what he called the Mataha Expedition, raising money through sales of a limited edition art object called the Golden Sun Disk. He obtained permission from the Supreme Council of Antiquities, then led by Zahi Hawass, and partnered with the NRIAG team led by Dr. Abbas Mohamed Abbas, along with experts from Ghent University. The team deployed 5 different geophysical instruments across 2 survey areas south of the pyramid, using a 6.5-foot grid spacing between profiles. The data showed spatially distributed, elongated, and square-shaped subsurface anomalies. Those are the words from the peer-reviewed paper, published in Surface Geophysics in 2010, the leading international journal for subsurface imaging. The paper was authored by Khalil, Abbas, Montero Santos, Mesbah, and Masoud in Volume 8, Issue 3, pages 203 through 212. The paper's language is deliberately cautious. It says the anomalies may identify the walls and rooms of the Labyrinth mortuary temple complex. May. Not confirmed, not discovered. May. Decordier's own published reports go much further. He describes granite walls at depths of 26 to 40 feet, rooms that are huge in number, and a massive wall extending straight down more than 55 feet. These claims have been widely repeated by podcasters, YouTubers, and alternative history websites. But they are single-sourced. Decordier is the only origin point for the dramatic version of this story. No independent Egyptian or Belgian press report from 2008 corroborates the claim that Hawass imposed a formal publication ban. And the fact that the peer-reviewed paper by the NRIAG team appeared in 2010 without obstruction in a major international journal is difficult to reconcile with a total suppression order. What we can verify is this: follow-on excavation never happened. The stated reason is the same one that defeated Amenemhat III: water. The saline water table beneath Hawara has been rising steadily since the construction of the Aswan High Dam changed the Fayum's hydrology. Neighboring agricultural irrigation canals are pumping water into the ground faster than it drains. And whatever survives beneath that foundation, whether it is intact rooms or collapsed rubble, is sitting in salt water that is slowly dissolving the limestone. In 2024, a team led by El Shazli and Massoud from Tanta University and the NRIAG published a study in the Delta Journal of Science using electrical resistivity tomography and transient electromagnetic surveys around the pyramid. They confirmed probable subsurface archaeological remains, but their primary conclusion was not about ancient rooms. It was about the water. They called for immediate changes to neighboring agricultural irrigation practices to save the site from further destruction. That paper barely made the news. And in 2025, aerospace engineer Mark Carlotto, a Carnegie Mellon PhD now working independently, published a study using Sentinel-1 C-band synthetic aperture radar and L-band satellite data. His images show anomalous radar returns on both sides of the Abdul Wahbi Canal south of the pyramid, in the same area the NRIAG team scanned in 2008. Carlotto's work appeared in the Journal of Scientific Exploration, focusing on anomalous phenomena, which is not a mainstream archaeological journal, but his technical credentials are legitimate. He has called for the Italian team behind the recent Giza pyramid scans to turn their satellite instruments toward Hawara next. That scan has been projected for summer 2026, but has not yet taken place. So here is where we stand. Herodotus walked through a building he said surpassed the pyramids. Strabo confirmed its monolithic stone roofs. Pliny described its thunder doors and staircases descending 90 steps into darkness. Petrie measured its foundation at 1,000 feet by 800 feet. A peer-reviewed geophysical study confirmed subsurface anomalies at the exact location. 2 independent follow-up studies, one ground-based and one satellite-based, have detected consistent signatures. And all of it, every wall, every room, every slab of stone that may still survive beneath that desert floor, is soaking in rising salt water right now. The labyrinth that Herodotus was forbidden to enter is not lost. It is drowning, and the clock is running out for anyone to confirm whether the underground level he described, the 1,500 rooms the priests refused to show him, still exists in any form beneath the sand of the Fayum. 2,500 years ago, a Greek historian stood at the threshold of the most ambitious building in the ancient world and was told he could not go below. Today, we have the instruments to see through the Earth itself. We have the satellite data, the radar returns, the resistivity maps. What we do not have is the will to dig before the water finishes what the Romans started. Some discoveries are made too late. This one does not have to be.